Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the Wildlife Moto channel. So today, I thought we'd do something a little different. I thought we'd take the BMW R100 CS out for a little bit of a ride in and around the city of London. This is my home city, you know, and I wanted to see how this bike's going to get on a 42-year-old Airhead in and amongst the craziness of the modern traffic. So we're going to take you for a little ride. We're starting out in Islington in North London, and I think we're going to head down to Regent's Park. And it's a bit of a warm day. It's about 25, 26 degrees, and the danger the danger with these old Airheads in and amongst modern traffic is, of course, the risk of overheating. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know this bike has had a complete crank out rebuild. The heads have been off, everything's been done on this engine. Can I squeeze through here? And we're still in that kind of slightly nerve-wracking stage of just being a little bit unsure that everything's okay. Now, I'm just back from a bit of a tour on this bike, actually. So I took it for a 3-day trip just here in the UK, nothing too major, with Sam and a bit of luggage and all that. And actually, it did really well. But most of that riding was, you know, on the kind of twisty B roads and things like that. I didn't spend too much time in any big cities. So this will be the first time that it's had a proper run through London. So hopefully everything will be all right. But yeah, I was really pleased with how it held out on our first significant trip on the bike. Nothing major happened. There was a couple of little minor things. The first thing was the rear indicators fell off, which was quite fun. I put a brand new bracket on the back of the bike to secure the indicators, but the weld that was holding it all together, what should I say, holding it all together? Speak proper English, man. Yeah, it completely failed, and I suddenly noticed a bit of kind of rattling on the back of the bike. I was like, what's that? And yeah, they were just kind of hanging off. So that happened, a bit of a weird one. The only other kind of weird thing that I noticed, it was actually after that that tour, was that the front fork on the right hand side, so this fork here, had developed a bit of a leak, which is not good, but not from where you'd expect. It wasn't any of the seals or anything like that. I actually had fork oil coming from the top of the fork, you know, where the fork cap is, and you've got that big nut holding the spring on. So yeah, it was kind of leaking out the top there. So I just undid it all, changed the O-ring, and it's been alright ever since. I also just put a little bit of thread sealant on it just to make sure, but thankfully we haven't had any repetition of that little gremlin. It's funny how all the things I kind of thought this bike might do haven't happened, but it's just kind of little weird bits and pieces like that. The big thing that I'm still desperately trying to troubleshoot is the lack of rear braking performance. It's not good. In fact, I'd call it pretty damn terrible. Now, I've done about as much as I can with my knowledge on this rear brake. I mean, I've changed the pads. I even took off the back wheel recently just to have a look in there, because I was suspecting maybe we had a maybe like an oil leak or something on the final drive that was potentially fouling the brake pad material. So I took the back wheel off. Everything is nice and clean. everything looks okay to my uninitiated eyes, because clearly something's not right. I've changed like the pedal position numerous times, done all that stuff, and yep, no bueno. Now I want to turn, we can only turn right here, which is good, so I think we'll be okay. And the bike's just about getting warmed up now, so we're not in the danger zone at the moment. According to my oil temperature gauge, we're only at about 90 degrees. I suspect that's going to change somewhat. Oh god, this traffic is very London. Let's see if we can worm our way into this. I think there's a little bus lane here, so we can actually use these. And thank goodness that we can, because it's a bit of a way to hack your way through the traffic. So if you ever ride in London, if you ever fancy a lesson in frustration, that's something to bear in mind. We can at least use the red route bus lanes. Isn't that lovely? So yeah, all is good so far. The only other thing I've changed actually on this bike since I last spoke to you guys is I've done the fuel lines as well. So I changed the fuel lines for some lovely Tigan thin-walled fuel lines. Supposed to be the best in the business, the old Tigans, so I got those. And I also got some K&N fuel filters as well, which just use a kind of sintered, I think it's a sintered bronze material to filter the fuel. So they just replaced the paper filters that I originally put on there. I put some cheap ones on to start with, just suspecting they might get a bit of a hard time, the bike having sat around for so long and all that. But actually they were pretty clean when I took it off. So I think we're okay, even though the tank is not in an ideal state. As I said, I had some problems with the shedding of the factory liner, which I discovered just after getting the tank beautifully painted on the outside. I then decided to have a proper look inside. Big mistake, yes, I know. Only to realise that yeah, it wasn't in the best condition. So I did make a couple of little short videos on it about how I used some electrolysis to try to strip off some of that remaining paint. The idea being that the electrolysis would really attack the rust and therefore kind of strip off most of the loose paint, which it actually did a fantastic job of. Could have gone and put some like vinegar in there as well and other bits and pieces that may have helped, but of course there are like proper paint strippers that you can dump in these tanks, but the risk of that also destroying the paint on the outside is quite high. It's not just a case of accidentally spilling stuff on it. It's the actual fumes from that stuff that can really wreak havoc with the old paint, so you've got to be careful. How hot are we? We're just coming up to 100 degrees and we've sat in a fair amount of stop-start traffic. The other thing that I've been kind of tinkering with a little bit on this bike is trying to get these carburetors just absolutely as perfect as I can get them, which I think I've now achieved. And actually there was a really cool video up on Brooke Ream's YouTube channel. I think it's called Brooke's Airhead Garage. There was a video with a friend of his called Dom, and they did a whole video on how to synchronize your carbs and all that good stuff. And I actually reached out to Dom after that video went up and asked him for some tips and tricks and all that. And he's been super useful actually. He's been kind of back and forwards on email to me, and what I'm going to do is make a bit of a video on how I've taken some of his advice and used it not only to get these carburetors, I think the best they've been so far, but also to make one of his special measuring devices as well. to get the vacuum sorted, which is yeah, pretty good actually. It's worked out, I think, pretty well. But what I've come to realise is that I think you could probably play with these carburetors forever and a day, and you're always gonna have a little bit of quirkiness. Little bit of vibes here and there, but it's about as good, I think, as I can get them. So I think I'll just leave them now. I think we'll just say we are as good as we can get them. And say what, my front suspension is feeling a little soft. I'm wondering whether potentially more oil leaked out of these forks than I first anticipated. I've got to be honest, I'm not happy with the performance of these forks really at all. I think they're okay. They're not like binding up or anything, like nothing particularly weird's happening, apart from, as I just said, they're feeling maybe a little softer than I remember. They're quite bouncy. But yeah, they're really quite bad, aren't they? It's one of the weaker points of these old Airheads, the front end. And you see a lot of rebuilds, people just go ahead and stick a whole new front end on. I can kind of see why. Yes, it's going to take away a lot of the originality of the bike, but my God, would it make it a hell of a lot more rideable, I think. But at the same time, I don't think I need to ride this bike hard. It's not that kind of bike, is it? It's a chill machine. Where are we at? 110 degrees. Not too bad. Idling at around 1200 RPM, which is good. One of the things I have spent a lot of time working on with the carburetors is that lift off from idle, which is actually massively helpful for city riding. If you don't get that balance just right, I'm going to come over into the bus lane. If you don't get that balance just right, I found that the bike wants to kind of bog down a little bit as you roll on the throttle, which is yeah, a very, very bad situation. Not good at all. It just means that the bike's trying to stall when you're just in that very, very initial roll on, which can make it quite dangerous actually, because I had a couple of times where it did just choke out at traffic lights, and sometimes when you're trying to do like a U-turn or something and you're just feathering on a tiny little bit of throttle and the bike starts bogging down, and then you panic and give it a handful and things get out of control. It's not what you want. So yeah, I'm really pleased. So if I just like touch the throttle here, you see there's no, I don't know if you can see the old rev counter, but there is no, are you in a good place there? Yeah, there is no hesitation. It just lifts off nicely. So we're going to do a left here according to the Beeline Moto, which is nestled perfectly up here on the little steering damper. Perfect little place for it. Works beautifully. Let's chuck it down here. And we are almost at our destination, which we've done in a pretty good time, I'd say, considering how bad things can get here in London. Temperature creeping up towards 120, getting a little warm. Lovely and smooth. Just feeling nice and warmed up now.
What was the CS? I remember the R100.
Yeah, it's just they call it the Classic Sport.
Oh, right.
So it just had like the fairing and all that. So it was like a throwback to the R90S.
Yeah, I remember the R90S very well.
Yeah.
I'm that old.
Yeah, so this is 1982.
Cast wheels, did it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is it's 43 years old, this one.
I'm so old I had an R69S.
All right.
19. One of the best bikes I ever had.
Yeah.
And all over Europe in it. Beautiful bike.
Nice. Love that though. That's beautiful.
Well, it's like a Harley but properly engineered.
Yeah. Well, I used to have a Scout.
Sorry?
I used to have the Scout.
Oh really?
Yeah. Very nice bike. See you, mate. Yeah, you do get a lot of people intrigued by this bike. It's either going to be people that remember it from back in the day, or it's going to be I've had actually a lot of people going, oh, I didn't know BMW were making those things again. So it's a lot of people think this thing's brand new, which is pretty funny. But it does look, I've got to be honest, it does look pretty shiny at the moment. And I'll tell you the great thing about these bikes is that they make for pretty cheap motoring. Once you built them, of course. You don't have to pay ULEZ, congestion charge, road tax. I don't even have to get this thing MOT'd. Can you actually believe that? Amazing, isn't it? So once you've done the hard work, you're good to go. You've got kind of cheap motoring for as long as you want. And insurance is pretty cheap as well. I think I pay like £200 a year or something like that for insurance, and I live right in the middle of London, so they will sting you hard. But yeah, it's cheap, easy motoring, very easy to maintain it once you've got it up and running, he says. Hopefully it's been pretty good so far, and definitely a bit of a money saver when you consider how much money it would cost you to ride a lot of bikes around London, where you're just going to get stung all over the place for all manner of charges here, there and everywhere. So yeah, we've made it to Regent's Park. We're in the millionaires, or should I say probably billionaires playground that is Regent's Park. Nice little chill place to come and hang out. I think all systems are in good order. Still very noisy from those cylinder heads. I'm just trying to get used to that. It is a noisy bike. You can hear the valves louder than you can hear the blooming exhaust, which is a little disconcerting, but as I'm reminded by people who know on a fairly regular basis, nothing much to be worried about. And in fact, it's probably better to have some noisy valves rather than valves that are too closed, too tight, and too quiet. You want to hear the noise, you want to hear the rattle. Downside of riding around Regent's Park is the cyclists. You've got to watch out for them, because they do treat it like a bit of a racetrack. How are we doing for temperature? We're getting hot. We're about 120 degrees, so things have warmed up considerably. But even at this speed, around 20 miles an hour, we should have enough airflow over the jugs to keep it all happy. Should we pull over for a second and have a little look around the bike? Go on, you go. Nothing on fire, nothing leaking. Yeah, everything looks good. So yeah, happy with that. She can handle modern traffic pretty well. No major problems. I mean, she is a bit warm, but that's probably about as bad as it's going to get, really, in terms of the environment I will take this bike through. But you do have to remind yourself, you know, these bikes have seen worse in their time. They've been put through deserts and goodness knows what, and they survive. So I don't think we need to worry too much. Right, where do I live? 12 minutes into neutral. Right, the B line is saying turn round, so I'm going to do that. Practice my UEs. Oh, look at that. I tell you what though, it is such a different experience from being on a modern bike. You might have seen recently that I got a new bike. I got an Indian FTR, And I tell you what, jumping back on this thing, having spent a few days on the FTR, it's just, you do realise actually we have come quite a long way. We have come quite a long way. Just in terms of just sheer performance and handling and all that stuff, this bike feels pretty soft, pretty flexy. You know, there is a reason why they call this the rubber cow. I don't think it was ever known as a handling superstar, but it certainly puts it into perspective once you jump off something very new and very modern and back onto one of these old classics. Even on my Royal Enfield, the Interceptor, you know, that's a classically styled bike, but it really doesn't ride like a classic bike. I mean, it feels brilliant, super tight, super predictable. You know, the handling's really sharp on those bikes, whereas I would worry about really throwing this thing around. I reckon I'd crash it. The speedo, by the way, on this bike massively overreads. So actually I could, yeah, it does. It overreads by about 5 miles an hour, I think, maybe a bit more, which is kind of good. Gives you a bit of a safety net in a world flooded with speed cameras, which wouldn't have been a problem when this bike first came out. It is now. I'm not sure that the traffic was this bad back in the 80s either. So this is definitely not what it was made to deal with. I've got a fun little day out planned actually with my dad soon. So I was chatting to the guys at Motorworks, and they do a calendar every year made up of like interesting bikes. And because I've kind of slightly got to know the guys because I've been buying a lot of parts from them, they were like, oh yeah, come and stick your bike in the calendar competition. And my dad is just an absolute photography geek. It's actually pretty good at it, to be fair. And it's got well into the idea of trying to recreate like a kind of iconic 80s photo with this bike in it. So we've gone the whole hog. We went onto eBay, we bought a little film camera, like a proper camera. He's done all the research on it. He's like found like the iconic camera from the 80s. So he's got that. We've got a couple of rolls of Kodak Gold. Do you remember Kodak Gold? The proper stuff. And we're going to go out and we're going to photograph this bike proper 1980s style and get a really cool couple of shots for the old calendar. Now, not to say that we'll actually make it into the calendar. That of course is up to Motorworks, but we're going to do this properly. We're going to get some proper kind of nostalgic style photos of this bike using the proper technique from the 1980s. And if you didn't go for a red light, then my name is I don't know, Bob. What am I talking about? Oh god. Come on guys, let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Old hot Airhead coming through. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on. Nice and narrow this bike so we can weave our way through some of it. Especially if people are nice and kind and let us through. I don't want to scratch my jugs. Got to be careful. We do have two relatively big sticky out bits. Will I get through there? Probably would, but it's a Bentley and I don't want to be making that call to my insurance company. Little rattle from the front end as we go over the rough stuff. Try as I might to find what's causing that, I cannot. So in terms of how this bike feels in and amongst the traffic, it feels pretty good actually. It's yeah, I mean, it's got a nice light clutch. It's not too grabby. It's not too nasty on the old fueling. Everything feels really smooth and predictable. It's actually quite different to my FTR that I've been riding recently. That bike's really quite choppy in amongst the slow stuff, thanks to its ride-by-wire throttle and the fact that they're all running super lean these days. This bike is lovely and predictable. None of that choppy kind of binary feeling that you get on the throttle. Combine that with a really nice light clutch, and it's smooth, it's predictable, it's refined. It's yeah, it's actually all right. No hardship at all. It does kick up a little bit of heat. We are warm because of all this traffic we've been sat in. But I think as long as we keep moving, everything seems okay. So really the only thing left to sort out, I think, on my little snag list is that rear brake. Small matter of the brakes. And I think once that's done, we're going to be, you know, we're going to be 100%. We're going to be properly sorted. Come on, come on, come on. Let's move, let's move, let's move. Can I squeeze through? Thank you, thank you. Squeezing, squeezing. All right, I'm bored. I'm hot. What if we do this? Is this any better? Is there any way through? No, there isn't. I'm trapped. Mate, you are going to have to just go. You're a bus. Do it. Do it. Keep going. That's it. Keep moving. Keep it moving. And I'll now use you as a shield. Shield my way. There you go. Lovely. And away we go. All right, that's pretty much wraps it up then. A successful ride through the London rush hour on the 42-year-old Airhead. It's proving, I think, that she's still got it. She's still got it. Until the next one, ride safe.